If you grew up near Oneida, New York within the last 100 years, you're probably familiar with the Oneida Flats. Growing up in the flats of Oneida in the 90s was an absolute dream. Shirley's dance store was feet away from Conehead's ice cream, and if you were feeling like a soda pop and bubblegum, you could ride your heelies through the bubbling blacktop of Bennett Street, past Agway, and into the doors of J&K, a corner gas station owned by none other than, you guessed it, J&K. The red, cool plastic of the rounded countertops provided sweet relief from the pressing summer heat that kept the mosquitos at bay until sunset. Once the sun began to dissipate on the horizon, you could ride your bike past the cement factory into the frog pond. The chirping and croaking of the frog chorus distracted you from the buzz of the cement turning past the trees. It wasn't unlike you and your friends to jump into the Oneida Creek for a late-night dip before racing the streetlights back home. Little did you know that it would be that very same creek, years later, that would wipe away all of those croaking frogs and buzzing mosquitoes. The woods with the neighborhood forts would be mixed into one big mass of sludge, churning and devouring everything in its path. This is the story of the Great Oneida Flood of 2013. Welcome to Who Are You? Curious Stories of Family Lore. I'm Wheatsy.
And I'm Sam Ivy.
And it has been a week and some change.
Yeah, it has.
And the events in which led to this episode, like there's a thing that happened this morning that caused a rabbit hole tangent of thought on the way to work.
Okay.
And I remembered all these things, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to talk about this so bad. And so I literally texted Sam, just like, hey, what you doing? It's like, do you want to record today? Because we recorded last week, and I have that episode, and we're gonna keep it. It will be aired at some point. Because something happened to Sam last week that we were like, oh, let's do this episode. And so since we didn't air that episode, just to give you a little spoiler, Sam got in a little car accident last week, her first one. And yeah, so that was chaotic. And I feel like that butterfly spiral trigger affected the next every day up until this present moment. Not directly, but it was like Sam got in an accident and we were supposed to record that day. Mm-hmm. And we were like, let's not. Hello. So, because she was at the hospital, and we will air that episode so you'll hear all about it. But before we jump into this and that intro, do you want to say anything about it? Like at all? Because it was crazy.
Honestly, I think if you viewers really want to know, you gotta tune in and listen to that episode. Get all the juicy details.
Fair enough.
I'm alive. That's all that matters. But if you really want to know, the series of unfortunate events that happened to occur for me last week, by all means, tune on in. Give it a whirl.
That one will be airing. We'll have it, so you will hear about that. I don't know what order, because I'll be honest with you guys. That happened. So then Sam and I got together. We recorded the episode in which we are discussing currently. And then I lost my headphones immediately after. We recorded the episode, and I remember having my headphones being like, I'm going to put you here. And I don't know where here is, guys, because It's now exactly 7 days later, and I have not located the headphones. So when I lose something, I get fixated on it. And I also had a craft festival where I had a booth on Saturday, and then Sunday was Mother's Day. So I've lost my headphones, so now I can't entertain myself in my booth all Saturday when everybody's out enjoying cat stock. And I loved it, by the way. Like, I will do it again, but it would have been nice to have headphones to, like, listen to music or something, or edit our podcast episode we had recorded the Thursday. And I know I'm talking a lot. We'll get into it, but these things are all relevant. So that is why you guys got a notification last week that there wouldn't be an episode, or it would be late. It'd be on Sunday because I lost my headphones and I had cat stock. But I was like, oh, I'm going to find my headstone. Whoa. What the fuck? What was that? I don't like that.
Yeah,
Freudian slip. Okay. Anyway, I was like, I'm going to find my headphones before cat stock and I'll edit the episode. That didn't happen. And I was way more exhausted. But I couldn't find them, so I didn't edit. I couldn't hear, so I want to balance the audio. And I hadn't thought to ask Brad at the time to borrow his, and we were out of town. So long story short, didn't happen. And then I forgot that it was Mother's Day on Sunday until Brad was like, hey, we're going to go do this thing. And I was like, holy crap, I'm not going to sit home all day. I thought you had to work and I'd be editing the podcast. So that's when I posted, no episode this week, guys. Happy Mother's Day. Because I was like, whoa, it's my day. And I was like, I want to spend it with the fam and be present. So that's what I did. So that leads us to today. Well, kind of. So I haven't found my headphones. I looked on Sunday, I looked on Monday, I looked on Tuesday, and I looked on Wednesday. That's every day, and I can't find them. And I've been hyperfixated on it. And when I'm hyperfixated on something that's missing, especially something I need to use, it has prevented me from editing the previous episode. Just being 100%. And so I was going to skip another week. I was going to say, hey, Pants, I just can't do it. And then something happened this morning where I was like, okay, I don't want to edit anything, but if we just post this like run through, because the other one I have to do some editing with, is the moral of the story. This one, I'm not going to edit it at all. I'm just going to throw on the theme in the beginning, throw it on at the end, and equalize it with the little levers that I use in my editing software, because I do it all myself, guys, by the way. You can't see me, but I'm shaking my fingers at Sam right now. So long story short, then this can be posted tomorrow. And then once I get some new headphones, because I'm clearly not finding the ones in which I've lost. And I'm not.
As soon as you purchase new ones.
What's that?
You're going to find them as soon as you purchase new ones. It happens to me every fucking time.
Yeah, I'll find them right as soon as I have the new pair in my hand. They'll show up. But I'm just like, okay. Well, so that leads me to this morning. I wake up and I'm getting ready and I'm running the water upstairs. But I decide like not to shower this morning because I'm like, oh, I'm going to dye my hair pink. So maybe I'll just like dye it pink tonight and shower tonight. So I'm not going to shower. That's a decision I'm grateful for, but I also kind of regret. And here's why. I ran the sink a lot though to like scrunch my hair and look presentable for work. And I go downstairs minding my own goddamn business. They were coming down the stairs behind me and I go into the kitchen and on the floor is so much water that looks like it's splattered. And my cats are in there and they both, as soon as they see me, they both turn and they're like, meow, meow. Like, do you see this? Meow. And I'm like, yeah, guys, I see that. And I'm like, I literally ask them out loud as if they're going to respond to me. I say, did you guys get on the counter and knock a bunch of plants down? And I swear Stoof looked offended when I said that. Like like something about the way he looked at me was like, are you fucking serious? Like, do you think that we caused all of this? And to which I would have said yes. But anyways, And I look up, and there is just water pouring out of the light. Out of the light. It's on, by the way. I turned it on as I entered the kitchen. It's the morning. This is a lot in the morning. And so I just turn the light off and I say to Brad immediately, I'm like, there's water leaking out of the ceiling fan light in the kitchen. And he says, what? And I say, yeah, because I know he heard me. It's just like, what? So I cannot call in because we are doing a project. I'm teaching these guys how to make phenakistoscopes, okay? I need to be there. That's all I'm going to say. It's going to be a whole nother tangent, but I need to be there to make these phenakistoscopes. I can't call in. So Brad had to call in, and we've been dealing with that flood. So that I was like, oh my gosh, it's like flooding coming out of the ceiling. Then I go to work, and I'm driving to work. And I'm like, holy cow, that was crazy. Like, it's so scary to see water dripping from the ceiling. And then I'm like, oh my God, this reminded me of something that happened to me. One day, this is not the flood story, but this is in the same neighborhood. One day I'm home from school. I'm like 15, or no, I'd have to be younger, like 14 probably. And I'm home, and the house that I lived in was in the flats. And we're going to talk about the flats because this flood happened in the flats in my childhood neighborhood. But the house I grew up in was kind of like on a hill, because we're going to get into it in a little bit, but I guess I can kind of talk about it now. The city of Oneida is a giant hill. The hospital's at the center, kind of, along with like a bunch of rich people's house in the Heights. What a creative name. So you have all these Richies. No offense, it's great, good for you. Sitting up there protected because they're up on the top of the hill. And then it's like where you have your like fast food restaurants and like grocery stores. And then everything kind of like spiders off. And the farther you go, depending on the direction, like the farther down you go. Like if you go towards Chittenango, you're kind of going uphill. So then as you go towards the flats, toward Oneida Creek, the culprit in this whole fiasco, you're going to the flats. So where I grew up, our backyard was completely in flat zone. Like that's the flats. But our front yard was across from Triangle Park, which is technically like where the Erie Canal used to be. So it's still in a flood zone. Basically, the house I grew up in sat between Oneida Creek, down the road behind it, lower. But it's where the Erie Canal used to go through because it's a natural like feeder bed. So it's like meant to hold water. That's what that's for. So basically what happened is they have still built in this flood zone. So you have Oneida Creek, and that's where my house is kind of like, or was, the childhood home was in the flood zone. That's going to come into play later, but I figured just tell you that now. So we're in that neighborhood. I'm in the regular story, and when you walked into the front door of this house and you went all the way to the back of the house, you were on the ground floor when you walked in the front, but then you were 2 stories up in the back. So you were like looking out in your view of the neighbor's house, truthfully. There was no view. There was the woods over here where all the kids played. So I'm home from school, and I'm sitting in the living room, and I hear dripping. And I'm 14, sick, home by myself. And I hear dripping, and I'm like, what is that? And I had started the laundry because I had a fever, and I remember I sweat through my sheets, so I wanted to wash them because I was sometimes kind, which was cool, as a teenager. And apparently, I didn't know this, but that was a mistake to try to do that, because I go into the dining room and it was just like this morning. I see like there's water on the dining room table, and I'm like, oh my God. And my mom had always had the table like there was a runner in the center. There were some candles. There was potpourri, a little pot of potpourri, some winding branches she had weaved through. Like, it was very beautiful. being pissed on by water just from the ceiling. And I'm like, oh God. And for a second, I'm like, am I hallucinating this? Am I so sick that like this is happening? So like, oh fuck. And I remembered, oh, right above it's the bathroom. The same thing. It's the bathroom up there. I'm like, no, because that's what's above our kitchen. It's the sink in the shower that's causing it to leak here. So I'm like, oh my God. So back to 14-year-old me, I run upstairs and I'm like cold sweating. I'm like shiver sweating. And I see there is a silver pipe thing, like this hose, and it's just fucking spraying water in every direction in that bathroom. The floor went up to my ankles. I remember being like, oh shit, because I felt the water touch my skin because my sock was soaked. I'm like, oh shit. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And then, like a goddamn angel, my Uncle Bob, rest his soul, just shows the fuck up out of nowhere because he had heard that I was homesick. So he just wanted to stop in and see how I was doing because he was in town because he was a truck driver. This motherfucker he's like, oh shit. That's the first thing I hear. I'm like, ah! Like, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to deal with a snake spitting water in thinking at least 10 inches at this
while you have a fever. Like,
while I have a fever. God, 14. This is literally less than a year after I was hospitalized for mono. So, like, my immune system is fucked. So I was really sick. And he just grabs the hose. He's like, turn the fucking water off. Just cussing at me. And I'm like, where did this get that? So I'm, like, pressing off on the washing machine. But there's a knob. There's a water switch behind it. And so he's, like, making this motion with his hands. And I'm just standing there. So he's just holding the hose. And he turns it off finally. And he saved the day. And so that was a whole deal. But that's what this morning reminded me of. And then I was like, that house is gone now. Sad. And then I was like, oh yeah, it's gone because that whole neighborhood flooded. And it was really bad. And I was like, I want to talk about that flood because natural disasters are terrifying.
Yep.
But what's even scarier is when it happens in your little neck of the woods, literally your neck of the woods. So, yeah. So that's the why this episode. So that's all of like the backstory. So
and
now
it's funny as fuck too, real quick before you get into this flood story, because it made me remember my house flood story, because I used to live in the basement of my grandma's house. And like you kind of remember the sun above it. It was kind of concrete floors. There was some like carpet kind of scattered throughout it, stuff like that. But it was, pretty standard industrial basement looking thing. All I remember is the laundry room was also downstairs, and everybody always did laundry. Obviously, it was in and out of that room. And I just happened to walk into my living quarters one night, and there is just a whole flood of water just coming from a very eerie dark hallway that is just creeping slowly into my living room and slowly making its way. And I just remember being like, what? Like literally like, what the fuck? And I go, and I think it was like our water pump or like our water heater or something like busted, and that shit soaked into all, like, I remember we had so many fans, like we took in like fucking carpet, like shock vacs basically to fucking try to like soak up all this goddamn moisture. It was a pain in the ass. So
yeah,
I couldn't imagine an actual like natural disaster of this caliber 20 times to 100 times more amped up. So just had to share my little tidbit before getting into it.
Yeah. No, it's scary. Water is a terrifying force. So even a small amount of water in your house can do so much damage. That's why it's crazy to think about people in this situation, people that I've known literally my whole life, just neighbors that I grew up with, like taking the way that this flood took generations of a close-knit community with an identity, which we will get into, the flat rats. Like, we are proud of where we come from. and we were forced to scatter. Now, it's not, granted, I didn't live there anymore, but like, we'll get into it more, but it was such a soul-crushing thing to experience. So let's talk about what happened. So at this point in time, I was in the military, so I was living in Colorado. Brad and I actually dated in 2012, so he was living in Colorado with me, and then he decided he wanted to go to school for music therapy, so he wanted to go back to New York because New York has a really good program, like really good schools, and he had a specific one in mind. And I was in the military. Our lives just weren't merging yet, worked out for us, but like he went back, and it was literally like he moved back to the flats. That was in September. This happened in June. So he was living there. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So Oneida Creek is the creek that runs through Oneida, named for that. And Oneida is named after the Oneida Nation, the Oneida Native tribe, whose land we are on. And I've mentioned them before, and I will continue to mention them anytime the name Oneida is used because it is theirs. So that's why it's called that. And so that was formed from glaciers merging through, just carving it through, and then pushing up the land around it, thus creating the hill that is Oneida. And when people were settling in Oneida, the founders were like, this is bad land here. This is not probably good to build on because it's really close to the creek, and like if it floods, like all this stuff's going under pretty easily. And the city was like, we could just make it cheaper, so that people who can't afford to live up on the hill where they won't drown and flood, they can just live down here and we won't tell them. We won't tell them. And the city was like, cool. Yeah, that sounds good. And so that happened. And I'm summarizing and I'm maybe slightly opinionated, but I grew up there, I can say that. So it is what it is. It's called gentrification. And you can be gentrified in a lot of different ways. So, yeah. So anyways, the low-lying area is aptly named the Flats because it's the flatlands that flood. And so since 1879 or 1891, I don't know where 1879 came from. Maybe that's the year Oneida was founded. Oneida, I actually have the year Oneida, New York was founded, and that is in the year 1848. It was founded as a village. So in 1848, it's founded. They're saying, hey, here's our plan. We're going to build here anyway. In 1891, the first major flood happened. They got wiped out. The funny thing about time, though, is it can cause people to forget or misremember. So somewhere along the lines, after that was wiped out, they just built again. And then over the course of up until 2013, there had been 7 pretty damaging floods, but the worst one was in 1950. And so my grandparents were alive to witness it. So there are people who were alive during that flood where that basically wiped out the entire flat area and they had to rebuild. But it wasn't as damaging. Like, it wasn't as many, but it was the worst in history. But this flood happened in a flash. So it was a flash flood, which is why it was so dangerous. Because it was like the creek slowly was rising up. So it had been raining for like days. And it had been raining slowly. So it was like the type of thing that is just building in the background.
Creeping up.
It's been creeping up, inadequately blocked. And that leads us to the morning of June 28th, 2013. So on the morning of June 28th, 2013, a local couple got into their car and headed to the grocery store to do some shopping. It was a Friday. The morning was rainy as it had been raining for days on and off. The rain seemed a bit more intense than it had been, so most commuters that Friday morning were driving slower than usual. The type of like roads where you're like driving and it's spraying out, you're like borderline hydroplaning. Huge raindrops. So I already described kind of like the layout of the town. So this couple that left, they left from Maple Street. Maple Street's in the Flats. They drove up. That's why my grandparents always called it Up Street. They're going up street because they're literally going up the hill, up street. So they went up street. They went to the store. On their way back, they were not able to get back to their house because there were emergency personnel and like lights blocking off, and they could see the water trickling down their road, but they weren't allowed to go back. So they had no warning. They literally went to go get groceries. They have groceries in their car. It would be weeks before they would be able to step foot back into their home. And then after that, like hardly anything was salvageable. So as residents were making their way around town, the water began to creep up past the bank of the creek, up into the gravel of the cement factory. The frog pond disappeared beneath muddy waters, and soon yards were submerged and basements were beginning to fill with water. As the couple finished their grocery shopping and attempted to make their way back to their home on Maple Street, they were greeted with emergency personnel and roadblocks. The rushing floodwaters were rising fast, a disaster that had been years in the making. And again, this is the worst flood. This ended up being the worst flood since 1950. It got to the point where homes were submerged up until the first level, and I think some were more than that. People were stranded on the roofs of their homes. People had no idea the state of their homes as they watched in horror as the waters began to rise. The town became an invisible just stream, like everything was gushing. There are crazy videos and pictures of that. I remember, oh my gosh, opening up Facebook. Every single person from my hometown was reporting on it. Like, it was terrifying because it's like, oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Trying to see if anybody was stuck. There were no, actually, before I say that, I didn't actually see any and hear of any, but hold on. I want to make sure before I say that. Because I am unsure, because I didn't think about that. No, I didn't think so. So there were no fatalities in this flood, thank goodness. It's a small town. I figured I would have heard about it, but at the time I was in Colorado, so you really never know. It was so deep that Coneheads, the ice cream, like the little ice cream shop I mentioned before, it had a giant wooden ice cream cone that towered above the little diner.
Yeah.
And that was like all you could see was just the top of that, like just the top of the ice cream cone. And the thing that like is crazy is that you have generational homes. Like, you have people that lived in the flats, like their grandparents, their great-grandparents built that home. The houses are passed down, just wiped away. Some foundations completely taken out because of where the pressure of the water hit them. And not only that, now you're like, you're homeless. You're without a home because you can't go back there. And this happened in 2013. It wasn't until 2015 that the city of Oneida, and I don't know why, and I'm not saying that there's any reason, I'm just reporting that in 2015, the city of Oneida finally decided to ask FEMA to buy out the houses so that they could be once and for all leveled and made into a no-build zone, which logical brain me is like, yeah, no one should be building there. Obviously, it's a pattern of repression, gentrification, and trying to put people in vulnerable positions without their knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it's in the fine print of a house, of a buyer's deal, and you're not told you're buying in a flood zone, or like really what that means, or given like, hey, this is what has happened here. Like, my parents weren't told they were buying a house in the flood zone. Luckily, they moved before that happened, but I just wonder if people were warned when they bought the houses that they're in a flood zone. That's all, because my parents weren't. And I would like to know that information purchasing a home.
Like, I wonder if too, like with that, if like it means like your house insurance is like, or your home insurance is a little higher in certain areas because you have like they try to compensate for, oh, you're in this flood zone, so you're more likely to have these damages, so you need to have flood protection, or shit like that. Like, I don't know if it could possibly break down in that way because a lot of people don't read the logistics of their contracts. They don't read into those little details. They're just like, okay, I get a home, I got home insurance, we're good.
And it's such a cute area. Like, it's such a, oh my gosh. I loved growing up there. I loved it because it was just such a cool layout. Like, you go down the hill and you can go to an ice cream place. You can go, I would buy all my dance costumes and clothes from that was my Aunt Shirley's dance shop. I could go visit my aunt and my cousins, get an ice cream from freaking Coneheads, and then go, like I said, I would literally do this. Go get gum and candy, like lemon heads specifically from J&K, and then go pop the tar bubbles on Bennett Street in the summer. Like, it was such a unique, awesome place to grow up. And then you go to the woods and it becomes Lord of the Flies. You have Brad's part of the woods. Literally, he had a fort and you had a whole minion, a whole little army of little flat rat fuckers, who I love, protecting his fort. And then you have another fort on the other side of the woods where all the not in Brad's fort people are building their own fort.
The opposing
and then
fort.
You'd come back the next day and your fort be vandalized because the other little fuckers got in there and fucked it up. So then it's your turn now. Now you gotta go find their fucking fort and fuck it up. But it was all in good fun because then we just built one big fort together, you know? So it was the woods, and growing up there in the 90s was really, really awesome and magical. And you had generations of kids before us growing up there, you know? So it was just, when you have a community that's close-knit like that gets shattered, so like in a blink of an eye, everything was gone. Everything was gone. And then the 2 years later, when you have the government bailout and you're like, oh, Coneheads is just not coming back. Oh, they're just going to level the entire car wash and the entire plaza that had the dance studio and the gazebo with the flowers and the hidden walkways. Like, all of the things there. Origlio's wagon wheel. That's another thing. Over 50 years, this family made homemade pizza sauce in this house in the Flats. Then they had their business there, the wagon wheel, pizza, locally owned in the Flats. I think they had moved to like a new location on Main Street, so it wasn't in the flood zone, but the house, the family home where the original sauce was made, that house, they were like, we're not selling, we can't sell this to the government. This is our home. This is worth more than the money they're going to give us to relocate. And that is why now when you go to the Flats, you're driving through and you see just empty plots of land of houses that used to be Ryan Aldash's house. Oh, that used to be Little Richie's house. Stephen and Jeremy used to live on that. There used to be a house there with a really cool winding staircase. Like, but then you see the ones that are still there, like Brad's parents' house. Oh, every time we pull up to that house, because I have been going there since I was 7 years old, and that is the only house besides my grandparents' house, who obviously my grandma doesn't live there right now. So that's a whole thing, but it's, now you go there and the ones that are there are the ones that said, I refuse to leave. This is my home. And granted, some people had to leave. They didn't have a choice. They had to take the buyout. Like, not everybody could stay, even if they wanted to, but there is something, it hits you different driving through the Flats.
Oh, yeah.
And I see Rhonda's house, and I'm like, yeah, she still lives there. Like, I remember, shout out Rhonda. If anybody in Rhonda's plan is listening, let her know she got a shout out, because I remember seeing pictures, and she used to babysit my brother and I, like, when we were real little. I remember Emily coming home from the hospital, and she's only a couple years younger than me. Like, core memories in that house. Seeing the pictures of it gutted, wrecks you in a way that is so hard to describe. But then to see her rebuild and like be like, nope, okay, this is what we got to do now. That was really also empowering to see like a community come together and rebuild.
Well, it's very empowering, and it also, I think, just like with the destruction of things like that, like it pulls on the heartstring, like we've talked about before in previous episodes, of like when you have certain areas, certain houses, certain memories made, certain locations that are ripped away from you, that you are no longer, you're almost like a stranger now walking onto this land, this house that you spent so many years at, you grew up there, like, you know, blood, sweat, and tears and all. So I think
Yeah.
for you too, like driving through your neighborhood and like seeing that, like, yes, like you might not have lived in all those houses, but you have so many different memories and you know all this shit, and it's almost like losing a family member. It's like losing a person. It's losing that core thing where it's like, yeah, that was our spot.
100%. 100%. And I also think about like the people who had to go back to their homes and clean them out, and all the things that were lost, the irreplaceable pictures, or I mean, could you imagine like your jewelry box with all your grandma's jewelry in it, washed away because you were grocery shopping? I can't.
Or even like imagine being that couple and like you left your kids at home, you left your dog, and you can't like
that. Like, oh my gosh, you leave for a second, even if your kid's like a teenager.
Yep.
You leave your teenage child there. I'm sure there were people there, like family members. It was a Friday morning. It was literally a Friday morning. People, it's June 28th, so probably out of school by then, because it's in New York. You go to school starting in September and you go until June. Out west, I think it's more like you start in August and go until May. So they were out of school by then, but I mean,
either way,
that's even
happy
worse.
summer to you. Like,
yeah. Oh, the summer started. Here's a flood. So, and I didn't do a ton of research into like the aftermath. I just wanted to talk about like the FEMA aspect of it and how people had to wait.
Sorry.
They had to. Oh, sorry. What'd you say?
No, go ahead. Keep going with your thought. I got something to tie into it.
Oh, I was just saying it's just crazy that they had to wait 2 years and they were called quote unquote flood refugees. And I would be so interested to hear from anybody from Oneida who lost their home or they were affected by it. And we could have a follow-up episode where it's just, you guys could come on and we could interview you and you could just talk about your experience and what it was like dealing with like being cared for and being reimbursed and like what that process was like, because this is the true horror of life. Yeah. This is the true like scary stuff, like being forced into the reality that, oh my gosh, this stuff is gone. My life is gone.
I mean, and honestly, like it kind of reminded me of watching the documentary on Netflix that was about Hurricane Katrina and everything, and like those flood victims, and like, granted, it wasn't a flash flood situation like this. I mean, they had, you know, they knew that shit was flooding, and then they had the, I want to say aqueducts, but I don't know if that's the right word, but they had like the, like barriers basically break. And that's what caused all the excess flooding that, like in your situation, took out the cheaper houses that were on flood land that they knew that, like, that's why the government prepared this and shit. And granted, that Katrina obviously had a more brutal outcome, but everything that you were saying and like your description of it just made me think back to like watching that documentary and hearing those survivors and those victims and like what they went through, and very similar. And it's very sad to see that we give so much money in taxes and other things that's supposed to be, you know, like helpful for us and in times of need and things of that nature. And then to see when those things need to be done, the reaction from our government and from our support systems and the lack thereof urgency is really disheartening.
Yeah. Like we're funding war, not taking care of our people. We got to care about our people. Like there is no, what are we fighting for if it's not for our people? What are we doing? Like the basic decency, basic humanity. I would bet my life. Nah, I wouldn't do that because I love my life. But I would bet a lot of money that if you ask somebody from Oneida where their greatest support came during that tragedy,
It's
They're
going to
going
be
to
a
say their
community.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fellow flat rats who are experiencing the same tragedy, I guarantee, came together. Anytime I am out somewhere and I see somebody from my childhood neighborhood, it's like we have not been apart. Shout out to Becky, shout out to Rachel. If you guys listen, I will shit my actual pants and I will text you immediately following because they're badass. And I used to dance with Rachel at Jody Lynn's school dance. Shout out, when we were growing up. And she's always been fucking awesome. And Becky has always been fucking awesome. And I feel like Becky also used to dance there. What the fuck? Am I remembering that now? Becky, let me know, because why do I feel like you also danced there? I just had a memory of you dancing there too. Maybe not. I don't know, but I went to high school with them, so my memory gets hazy. But I saw them at Catstock. They were in the vending booth right next to me. So I kept poking my head out of the back of the tent, being ridiculous. And it was just like, I'm like, I can be my authentic self because these are fellow flat rats.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like this thing that doesn't exist anywhere else. And it's such an honor. And so I wanted to focus on that as opposed to my leaking $5,000 bill that I'm looking at right now. Yeah, and that doesn't even include repairing the ceiling after they replace the pipes underneath it. Then we have to get a separate company to come in and do that. But you know what? I'm not complaining because, like I said, I wanted to talk about the great flood of Oneida, because I'm like, dang, you know what? That's not that bad. That's not that bad of a leak. So it's all about perspective. And so shout out to all you flat rats in Oneida, New York. I'm proud to be from there, and I am proud to talk about your stories. And if you want to talk more about your specific experience, please DM us on Instagram at who letter R letter U podcast. And same with YouTube and TikTok. But if you want to email us, it's wrupodcast@gmail.com. WRU, they're all letters, 3 letters, WRU@gmail.com. Send us an email. Let us know. We'll set something up, because I can't even imagine what that must have been like. So. But yeah, that's all I got.
No, dude.
Any final thoughts for the listeners, man?
Final thought I can say is be kind to your community, man. Like, you never know. I mean, with the Oneida situation, with my car crash, if you guys listen to that episode and how my community and my family rallied for me, you don't know who your true support is until times of crisis happen. And when they do, and when it does, don't take it for granted. Know that you can handle it. You're never given anything you can't handle. But keep in mind, pay attention to those who are around you, those who help support you.
Yeah. Yep. And, make some cookies for your neighbor.
Bring over some sugar.
Check to make sure they don't have allergies first. But you should do that. Or bring them some flowers. They could be allergic to those too. I don't know. Write them a note. You're not allergic to paper. Leave them a note.
Be kind.
Be cute. Be cute. Don't be creepy. Don't say, hey, I see you every day. I hope you're good. That's creepy. You know what? I don't know what your heart neighbors. Be nice to them.
Yeah. Do what your heart desires, man. If your heart's telling you, tell them, hey, I like your face. Let them know you like their face. It might make their day.
Yeah, and maybe also just go ask them. Who are you? Also, Phoebe Bridgers is